would like to announce that Speaker Tim Moore appointed Jack Cal Morgan III to the appraisal board for a term ending June 30th of 2023. Mr. Morgan is a MAI, SRA, AI, GRS member of the Appraisal Institute, graduate of the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina, has over 20 years experience in real estate appraisal, construction, and investment analysis. He is the owner of J.C. Morgan Company in Wilmington, provides appraisal services as well as review, consulting, and litigation support. He's a licensed general contractor and real estate broker. He served on the Property Tax Commission, NC Property Tax Commission from 2013 to 2017, and currently serves as the chairman of the Wilmington Zoning Board of Adjustment. And he and his wife, Sienna, have 3 children. So we want to formally welcome him on board. I also would like to say that Speaker Moore also reappointed Mr. Talent to a term ending June 30th, 2023, and Senator Berger, the Senate President Pro Tem, reappointed Ms. Burnham to a term ending June 30th, 2023.
Welcome, Cal. That was that introduction sounds like when Tiger Woods is on the tee at a golf tournament with all those designations. That's pretty impressive. But welcome to our board.
Thank you. I look forward to working together with everybody.
Next, I would like to, before we go into the formal meeting, also to recognize Mr. McGill again for his service. And we do plan, hopefully, doing a formal recognition as soon as we can meet in person again. So again, Chuck, if you're on the phone call, we miss you and we wish you all the best. So next on the, if we could, I'd like to call the meeting to order for August 1st, 2020. I would like to remind everyone to physically raise your hand if you would like to be recognized. And also, we will go ahead and do a formal roll call at this time. Ms. Alfrost.
Here.
Ms. Burnham.
Here.
Ms. Carmichael.
Here.
Mr. Morgan.
Here.
Ms. Scotton.
Here.
Mr. Talent is absent. Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Warren.
Here.
Very good. Thank you. So I would also like to let the board know and the outside attendees, Ms. Seeley will be acting as the administrator for this meeting. If she feels it necessary to pause or to help us with any technology, she will be responsible for that. Please let her know either by text or in your group chat. So to get started, I would like to read the conflict of interest reminder. In accordance with General Statute 138A-15, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. If any board member has any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board today. If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. I see no conflict, no hands raised. So we will move on to the next item would be, I would entertain a motion considering approving the agenda with items taken in any order as determined by the chair.
So moved.
Mr. Taylor with a first.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Warren. Thank you. Next would be approval of the minutes, Exhibit 1. Are there any corrections, deletions, amendments to the minutes? If so, please raise your hand and I will call on you. If none, I would entertain a motion, please. Please remember to state your name when you say the motion.
This is Liz Carmichael. I move that we accept it.
We have a first by Ms. Carmichael.
I second that.
We have a second by Ms. Burton. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Motion carries. And next, we have our finance report, Exhibit 2. Mr. Rogers?
Okay, you do have your profit and loss statements for the months ending May and June. Just quickly go over a few points. As you may imagine, because of a heavy amount of reduced expenses due to not much travel for board and staff, and we did have a little bit larger surplus than forecast. If you look at the bottom of your June profit and loss, it shows a net surplus of $165,000. It will not be quite that much. There are a few items that once the audit is done that will be reconciled back to last year, but it's a fairly reasonable representation of the surplus from last year. Also, just to point out, this was our first year of online renewals, and we are, of course, in an extension due to the COVID situation, so we're wondering what impact that might have on our renewals. To date, we had forecast $700,000 for appraisal renewals. We're at $677,000. We had forecast $280,000 for AMC renewals. We're at $266,000. So we're really pretty close to our forecasted objectives, with roughly 2 months left before the extension ends. So that's where we stand today.
Next meeting, Mr. Rogers and staff will be presenting the cash position of the board also in conjunction with our next meeting, as I said. So any other questions for staff concerning finance?
And I was going to mention this later, but I'll bring it up since you mentioned the cash position. Our auditors will be here beginning next Monday. Well, actually, I think it will be mostly virtual, but they will be doing our audit next week. And so they plan to report in September, so you will get the full financial report at that time.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to legal. Ms. Panico.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Just before I get started, there's a lawnmower outside, so I hope you can hear me. There's a few corrections on the PC route summaries. Page 15, if you're looking at page 15 of the legal, I'm sorry, there's a lawnmower right outside my window. Maybe it'll go away. Page 15, under value conclusion, those dates should be 2020. There are 3 dates. If you see signed January 23rd, 19, there should be 2020, and then the revision should also be January 29th, 2020, and then the subsequent revision should also be February 1st, 2020. So that was a typo there. And then there's a further typo on page 29. Investigative report date should have been July 19th, 2020. Everyone got that? Okay. In addition, I just wanted to point out to everyone that the recommendations are staff recommendations, and the board can feel free to amend those recommendations if you see fit or if you have any questions about the recommendations. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chairman. If anyone has any questions or...
Okay, so again, I will go ahead and go alphabetically if you have any questions concerning any of the probable cause cases. Ms. O'Front?
No questions.
Ms. Burnham?
No questions.
Ms. Carmichael?
No questions.
Mr.
No questions.
Ms. Scott?
No questions.
Mr. Taylor?
No questions.
Mr. Warren?
I have one question. It's on case 2019-0062, page 4.
Okay, there being that the only question, may I get a motion to dismiss of all of the cases presented to us today except for 2019-0062?
This is Mike. I make that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Warren to dismiss all the cases except for 0062. Do we have a second?
Ms. Carmichael, I second.
Thank you, Ms. Carmichael. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, you mean approve the staff recommendation for all of those
Yeah.
cases, not dismiss the cases, you mean, okay.
Okay, excuse me, yes, that's staff recommendation. Forgive me. So we have a motion and a second. We have, that is passed unanimously. So I will ask Mr. Warren for a question on 0062.
My main question was, this was the case where the appraiser seemed to have appraised the property, and I'm not sure whether it's new construction or existing construction, but without some of the attributes that the property was going to have as a result of the sale, like it's supposed to have a screen porch, and it looked like that those things were going to be added at a later time or was not complete. I was wondering if the staff recommendation has to do with the sales contract. Were those items noted in the sales contract?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
It was a very lengthy contract.
Okay, very lengthy contract, and the appraiser did have that information.
Yes, it was new construction.
Okay. And I guess I'm a little concerned because, as part of USTAP, we're supposed to analyze any sales contract, and obviously this wasn't done adequately. So I guess I'm wondering if just the warning is strong enough, or we might need to have some type of class associated with that.
You could certainly make that recommendation, the board can make that recommendation.
We could possibly look at appraiser liability or something along that line.
I think that would probably be a little more suited for this.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So if you want to make a motion to reflect that, that would be fine.
Can I make a motion that we reflect this dismissed with the condition of a class and appraiser liability?
And that is along with the staff recommendation as well, is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
So in addition, a warning as well.
In
right?
addition, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Warren. Do we have a second for that?
Taylor, second.
Mr. Taylor, the second. Any discussion? Any comments from any other board members regarding this? If not, we have a first and a second. And since we had discussion on we at least have question on this, I will go for a roll call on this one, please. Ms. O'Front, in favor, or against Mr. Warren's motion? Okay, thank you. Ms. Burnham?
Aye.
Ms. Carmichael?
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Morgan?
Favor.
Ms. Scotton?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
In favor.
And Mr. Warren?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up would be pending hearing report, Exhibit 4.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to discuss that there was a different format for two of the reports, and if the board has any thoughts about that, I'll leave that up to you.
Well, I'm fine since we can take the agenda items in any order. That's okay. It was either
Okay.
going to be here or another item, so I'm perfectly fine with that. So if you want to go ahead and just bring that up so the attendees besides our panelists can understand what you're speaking of.
Sure. So the report, as you can see, I think most of the reports were done in the typical format that they've been done in the past. And then two of the reports were done in this new, more summarized kind of a form with information, summaries, more summarizing, more succinct format, and wanted to get some feedback from the board as to what you thought about that format, the new format versus the old format. And for you, Cal, Mr. Morgan, I know this is new for you, but you can see that the majority were done in one format and then two were done in this different format.
Any questions about the new format?
Does anyone have any questions about the new format or any feedback about the new format?
Mr. Warren?
Yes, I mean, I like the new format. I think that in these two instances, one of them with the last case, it was kind of an odd case. It wasn't our typical. So I think I would like to see a few more of these on a trial basis. And the second one, I think, was on the ANC case. And,
right.
I think that worked very well for that. But I would like to see this used on a trial for some more typical type investigations and probable cause. This is Lynn Carmichael.
Okay. Then you'll move to, Lynn, do you have your hand up?
Yes.
Go ahead, Lynn.
So I just wanted to comment on the form also. I wanted to say that I really like where it's outlined what the potential violation was and the evidence that supported it. I found that to be extremely clear, straightforward, and just very, very, very good. I like that format. And then with the potential violation also, sufficient evidence, whether they said yes or no. It just made the support for the recommendation very clear. I liked it.
Any other comments from board members?
Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this subject of the new form will be presented in a committee report at the end of the meeting.
I apologize, Mr. Taylor.
Okay. All right, it's different for everyone when we're not in person. It's all right. Okay, Ms. Seneca, if you do the pending hearing report exhibit 4.
Sure, that is, okay, give me 1 second. Those are the 3 cases that are pending hearing. They may resolve without a hearing, but those are the only open cases right now, other than the ones from today's meeting. So these may go to hearing, and if they do, the issue will be whether we can do them remote somehow, or wait until we're in person. And that's kind of the unknown question right now. There's a new statute that was passed with regard to remote hearings, and the respondent would have to agree to a remote hearing. They may or may not agree to that, so that's part of it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Trying to see if I can resolve these cases, may not be able to, and so those will be possible upcoming hearings.
Disciplinary actions?
Yeah, these are
Okay, so is that complete your report then?
yeah, sorry, yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, you're on item 5 on your disciplinary actions year to date. You see that through June we'd had 51, so we're on pace for close to 100. We have seen an uptick in complaints in this year from probably the recent 2 to 3 years time, and we probably look like we're going to be on pace for about 100 complaints. I think most of it still isn't, even though they're not all residential, they still are mostly in that arena, and they're probably due to the uptick in refinance sales activity early this year. So I feel like that's where it's coming right now.
And Don, I think from that aspect, again, that you do see a little bit of a pattern in our cases, again, where you said they're volume related and they seem to be related to bringing in turn time, et cetera. Again, really items that do fall into there. So many appraisal requests going into a funnel right now and getting them out is causing a little heartache and headache. And I think you mentioned maybe we could look at an article in the upcoming newsletter.
Exactly. I did speak with the chairman about the fact that we do have several of our complaints are really, even though in general they may seem, just business oriented, that the appraisers probably do need to be aware of when they make a promise due to an engagement, or when they tell whether it be the AMC, the lender, or somebody involved in the process, there's going to be a certain deadline met, and it doesn't happen. That sometimes will precipitate a investigation. And so, I mean, it's not necessarily would we go after just that issue, but it's the thing that kind of ignites the process. And also we had one that we had in the PCs that we made a recommendation because of the appraiser said they didn't have to speak to the client because they're not, the homeowner, because they're not the client. Well, when I've spoken to the public or appraiser groups in the past, I try to say, look, yes, you don't have to, you're bound by confidentiality, limited to what you can say to the homeowner, but you also need to understand their stakes in this situation, and you need to be, I guess, careful in how you answer the question. Don't just hang up the phone and say, I don't have to talk to you. So that's the kind of thing that we would maybe craft an article to make appraisers aware of some of these engagement issues and dealing with the different parties to the transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Licensing and education, Exhibit 6.
Okay. You have the individuals that were licensed since your last meeting, for May and for June. And also in item 7, you have AMCs that were issued effective July 1. So, and you will, when we finalize the July report, which we'll get next time, you'll probably see a good number that get held over and for issuing on July 1st. If they apply in May and June, we offer them the chance to defer to July 1 so they don't have to renew with just a month of time. Obviously, if they need to go ahead and be issued so they can work, we'll allow that. But it's a lot of them will wait for that July 1 issue date.
Examination reports, Mr. Rogers, Exhibit 8.
Yes. Item 8, as usual, you got your exam report, and we had 2 first-time test takers in May. 1 pass, 1 fail, and then we had 3 in June, 2 pass and 1 fail. So again, don't know if those are statistically relevant given the small sample size, but it seems to be kind of in line with what nationally we expect.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Rogers on those items? There being none, we'll move to other items on our agenda. The first one being the discuss the extension of virtual online course approvals through December 2020. Currently, we did through September of 2020. Ms. Panico, would you like to make any comments there, or Mr. Rogers?
I would just defer to Ms. Panico on the issue of whether the fact that we're just going to
due to the fact that we are still in phase 2 in our state and allow the providers, along with all the appraisers, to plan for their education appropriately. Ms. Panico?
Yes, I was just going to say that my recommendation is you can do this by policy. You don't need a new rule change, given the current pandemic.
Okay. At first, then I would entertain a motion for this before we go into discussion concerning this. Can we have a motion, please?
So moved. Mayor Burnham.
Okay, Ms. Burnham. And do I have a second?
Taylor,
Ms.
second.
Carmichael.
Okay, so we have Mr. Taylor with a second on this to allow the virtual online course approvals through December 2020. Discussion. Any comments from anyone, any board members? Okay, we have a first and a second to extend the virtual online course approvals through December 2020. I will do roll call. Ms. Alphonse?
Aye.
Ms. Burnham?
Aye.
Ms. Carmichael?
Aye.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Warren?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have Exhibit 10, review the appraisal foundation reports. Mr. Rogers?
Okay, you do have in front of you just the issues we've had come up from the foundation. In your packet, you actually got a link to the appraisal foundation's annual report. We just we attached this front page of the email for just for the book purposes. Would suggest in your time you review that. I would go just on following up that. Recommend, if you haven't already, just maybe link to the Appraisal Foundation's website and you can register with them and get emails on things they do have come up. And they're doing a lot virtually now, and they're having a lot of meetings. I'll mention one coming up shortly, and it's probably a good idea, given, again, probably always a good idea, but given the situation we're in, with a lot of information. They're doing a lot of their meetings virtually now that you can plug into. So just making you aware of that. And they are looking for candidates for both the qualification and standards board. If you know anybody, a current regulator cannot sit on these boards, but if you know anybody that's might be a good candidate, you might make them aware of that. So that's all with regards to the foundation's reports at this time.
So again, not strictly foundation, but link to that, Don, if you would like to. You may want to mention just for the attendees. I know the board is aware that Arrow has been canceled, but maybe just mention their potential plans.
Exactly, and that was going to be in staff report, but I'll go ahead and touch on that. Is Arrow was canceled for the fall as far as an in-person conference. They were scheduled for October in Washington. They will be doing some sort of virtual sessions. At a minimum would be the reports from the foundation and the two boards, ACB and ASD, as well as an update from the ASC. Appraisal Subcommittee said those will be done. The Arrow Business Meeting will be done virtually. And then I would possibly see some, maybe a session on the grant proposals and from the subcommittee and a few other issues. I know it's still new right now, and they're looking at possibilities, but I don't believe it would be more than 2 to 3, hour-long sessions. But right now, they're still piecing it together.
Thank you. We'll move to committee reports. First, I would call on Mr. Taylor from the Allegation Complaint Committee for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been numerous discussions about what this committee is looking at we met with staff, mainly with Tom Lewis, and we talked about the necessary changes that the rule would entail and how to go forward with that. The staff provided a discussion of the type of situations where the allegations might not rise to the level of complaint and administrative follow-up. Staff also provided a brief overview of the current case review process and enforcement timelines. The committee also discussed the process of considering potential alternatives that could expedite the allegation complaint process. The committee discussed the investigative scope. We discussed the need to allow the staff to have flexibility so that the investigator can use appropriate resources when necessary. Finally, the committee did come up with a recommendation to the board, and this is for a trial period ending December 31, 2020, to the following staff suggestions to expedite the investigative process. The staff will consider the appropriate scope for the investigation before signing, with the understanding that the investigator has the option to expand the scope if necessary. And the committee also discussed with doing this with the technology and the professional involved field work, which may become less important. For instance, for these allegations not involving respondents' activity in an assignment requiring a site visit, he doesn't have to have a site visit demanded of that investigation. 2, limit in-person interviews with respondents and witnesses by utilizing virtual platforms and telephone interviews. Case assignments to investigators made before the receipt of the responding following investigators to move more quickly and have more control of their schedule. These are the items from the staff, by the way, I'm reading. Changes to the probable cause summary format, which is what you saw in the last 2 today, that new format, and which was discussed already. So these are the recommendations that we heard, and we said we like what we're hearing, but we want to limit it for a test run and have that run through the end of the year. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any board questions for Mr. Taylor? Okay. There being none, next committee report will be from the New Technology Committee, and that is something we just put together over the last few weeks. This is based on the needs of the board for the next 3 to 5 years. And again, as you can see from our meeting today, just what type of technology we'll need, etc. And Mr. Rogers is going to give the first report of that committee. Mr. Rogers, unmute, please.
First time I did that, but just as a quick, going back to last meeting, our strategic planning committee has been looking at some issues that the board needed to look at, but then when we get into the nuts and bolts, the chairman and I discussed maybe we needed a committee just to work on some of these projects and issues for myself and Ms. Seeley to bounce things off of and come back and forth with for proposals. The the issue of technology within the board building itself, specifically the board room and conference areas mainly for virtual meetings to allow board members to remote in, possibly in the future, possibly recording technology if the board ends up needing to record or stream meetings ourselves, etc., looking at those items going forward. We had two vendors come in and look at the project and offer potential solutions. While discussing these quotes, Ms. Panico said she thought we may be required to go through NCBIT for this type of project. Quite frankly, I thought this was a straight purchase and not a long-term contract. In dealing with NCBIT previously, I didn't think this was the same issue, but we did feel it'd be prudent to check on it. And indeed, after talking with our contact we worked with on our upgrade project, they did say that this is the type of project that if it's going to exceed $25,000, they need to be involved. So, as you can imagine, when you get talking about technology and things like that, it doesn't take long to meet that threshold. So we did. Ms. Seeley and I met with NCDIT, their procurement, and so they said, since we're looking for a turnkey solution, we want somebody to come in here and tell us what they recommend, and when they leave, they show us how it works. We don't want a bunch of boxes laid at the door and we need to install them. So they suggest that we do an RFP and outline what tasks we want accomplished, and they'll help us format and put it out for bid. They thought it was fine that we had two vendors look at it, so that we have some idea of what we are looking for, and they said we're welcome to advise those companies when the project is up to bid on the state website. And while cost is required to be a consideration, they said we're looking for best value more than the bottom line cost. So cheaper doesn't always mean better, as we all probably know. So the objective for going through them is so that they make sure agencies have contracts that set up performance objectives and deadlines for the vendor, so that we don't get stuck holding the bag. So they suggested things we'll be looking at and making a decision. Does it meet the project needs? Is it the ease of use? Is it aesthetically? Does it match what we want to do in the boardroom? And then, of course, affordability. Staff will create a list of objectives and run those through the technology committee, and then we'll put those forward to DIT to get the RFP process started. And so that's where that first phase will go. So while we were talking to DIT and knowing that this is not where our technology issues end, we asked them about continued upgrades to our database and working with our current provider, as many of you know, Miracomp. I've used that name in board meetings, and Vincent Miranda, who's worked with the board since the late 90s. And after we ran through numerous database companies in 2012-13, and then we went back and utilized DIT and had some suggestions from them, we determined that he was the best solution, and he indeed is the company that did our online renewal process, and he just understands our business rules, etc. So I mentioned the hesitance to have to go through another process when we've been through a couple already, and they said that since we had made that determination, we worked with them in the past, that there is a waiver we can apply for and say that he has an intimate understanding of our processes and is a good solution going forward. So in addition to the projects that he is currently working on that the board approved last year about this time, we will also probably be looking for him to make some other changes. And so their grant proposal personnel, and their first grant proposals are due, like, I believe, August 17th. And of course, we're 2 weeks away from that. But the second one, second wave is due December 31st, and he said we would not be in any way hindered to apply for that date, and we would actually be eligible for funding for purchases done after October 1st. So that probably looks reasonable for these type of technology upgrades. I don't believe their funding would probably qualify for the boardroom, the virtual technology, maybe a small piece if we wanted to go there, but I think we're more looking at it in terms of things that help the actual day-to-day database process and working remotely, et cetera. So that's where we stand right now. We will be looking at both the grant proposal and the RFP process with DIT in the next few weeks.
Anything else from the committee, Ms. LaFrance, Ms. Burnham, or Mr. Warren concerning that? Very good. We'll move to staff report next. Ms. Rogers.
All right. The office continues to be closed to public traffic. As Mr. Wrightsville alluded, we're still in phase 2 by the governor, and staff is working on staggered schedules still. We are in here at least 4 days a week. Management's here most every day. Occasional work from home day for different reasons. We have been able to respond to all correspondence, mail, email, phone calls in a timely manner. The online renewal process, as I mentioned earlier, seemed to work smoothly, especially for the first year, and was particularly helpful in keeping the amount of mail that had to be dealt with to a minimum during that time period. Mr. Lewis and myself participated in a Zoom conference with the North Carolina chapter of the Appraisal Institute on June 18th. We discussed recent rule changes, the emergency rules, the extensions of renewals due to COVID-19, common complaints, and current appraisal filings. That went well, and it was a format very much like what we're on here today. As I mentioned in the finance report, auditors will be here next week, beginning August 10th, for our audit, and are expected to report at the September 24th meeting. The AQB, Appraisal Qualifications Board, and the Appraisal Foundation are hosting a forum next week on the future of distance education. They are going to have panels consisting of professional society education providers, proprietary education providers, and regulators and certifiers. And due to the letter that the board had me to send in on the board's behalf recommending continuous approval of virtual reality, I've been asked to participate on the regulator panel. So as I told Mr. Wrightsville, no good deed goes unpunished. So I will be attending that. We actually have to have training for the call on Monday, so and then it will be next Wednesday. But you can register at the foundation website if you wish to observe this panel. So I actually look forward to participating in the discussion. And I previously mentioned the Fall Arrow Conference. I won't go through that again, but I will also mention that last week we were notified that Mr. Brent Jays, Arrow's managing director, tendered his resignation effective last Friday, which was the 31st of July. So Arrow will be looking for somebody in terms of a person to manage day-to-day activities as well as a event planner. And then finally, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the AFC will not be doing our compliance review as scheduled in November. They've notified us that we are rescheduled for the week of November 1st through 5th, 2021. And just on that note, you may recall that we are scheduled for a board meeting meeting, I believe it's November the 5th, which is a Thursday. Given the fact that they will not be attending, or they will not be coming that week, and that we don't normally meet on Thursday, and that is the week of Election Day this year, staff did want to suggest, do we want to look at moving the meeting, possibly one recommended date we might have, and this would get away from the September meeting, but possibly on November 17th, which would be Tuesday, a couple of weeks later, the week before Thanksgiving. But we don't have to make that decision today. You can, but we would just throw that out as a consideration. And it would also, like I said, it would space a meeting out from September. Plus, we normally try to meet the first meeting of the next year toward the end of January, 1st of February. It would make that gap smaller as well. So, but I'll just throw that out for your thoughts and discussions. If we want to make that decision in September, we certainly have time to notice.
Thank you, Don. Board members, the potential of moving that date, does anyone, I can go for at this time a head nod if you want to. You want to look at November 17th instead to space these out, or are there conflicts? Can everyone look at their calendar now? I'll give you a few moments. Mr. Taylor is nodding that yes, he would like to do that.
I'm good with it.
Ms. Burnham as well. I see Mr. Morgan saying yes. Ms. O'Connell.
I'm good.
Ms. Carmichael. Ms. Stoughton, I see that. I think Mike, I'm waiting to, Mike is good with that. Then let's, Don, looks like we're all good there. Let's move it to the November 17th then.
Sandra, do we need a vote on that, do you think?
No.
Let's go ahead and get a motion and a vote, please.
Okay, Ms. O'Connell?
We need a motion, or
Yes, the motion.
do we have? Would you like me to make a
Yes,
motion?
yeah. You're first on my screen, that's why I think it.
Okay, so I guess I need. Tell me if I'm not phrasing this right, but I'd like to make a motion that we set a date for our meeting to be November 17th, 2020.
Okay. We have a
I
second.
second that.
Second by Ms. Burnham, thank you. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand, sorry, let's do that. Okay, good. I see everyone. Excellent. Okay, any opposition? Very good, motion carries. The meeting will be November the 17th as opposed to November 5th. Donna, do you have anything else under staff report?
No, that is it.
Okay. And I would also entertain a motion, and I won't pick on Claire this time. Cal, you're pretty close up there in the screen. We have our newest board member. I would entertain a motion to go to closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 18.6.
Fair move.
We have a motion by Mr. Morgan. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Warren. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good. Perfect. Got everyone. Any opposition? Motion carries. The board will now go into closed session, and I believe Ms. Steele will take a. How long do we need to do this to move into?
We need all of the public members to drop off.
Okay. Do you want to say a 10-minute break, or do you need 15?
10
minutes. 10-minute break.
And we do need to suggest when we'll be back on so that we can,
Yes.
Sandra, do you want to give us?
Do you have a time estimate?
It doesn't take too long, maybe 30 minutes at most.
Yeah,
Or we could say 20 minutes. Even.
Let's do that. Let's do that, say, back on at approximately 10:20. So that'll give us a few minutes for 10 minutes for the break, and then at 10:20 we'll come back live for the other attendees as well. Thank you.